My father demanded I go to my golden sister's wedding, warning he'd cut off my tuition. He didn't know I'd already graduated valedictorian earning 6 figures. Right before the vows, I passed him an envelope. When he read it, I still remember the chill that ran down my spine when my father's voice crackled through the phone, sharp and final. You're going to that wedding whether you like it or not, Laura. Miss it, and I'm done paying for your education. You hear me? Can you imagine being threatened like that? All while holding a secret acceptance letter to your dream grad program. A secret that literally no one in your family knew existed? It was a moment that changed everything. Retelling the core story, my name is Laura, and I was 22, sitting in my small Portland apartment, staring at that letter for environmental engineering. For most of my life, I'd been the invisible daughter. My younger sister, Jessica, was the golden child, the one whose every achievement was celebrated like a national holiday. Me. I was just the backup plan, the disappointment, the one who existed to make Jessica shine brighter. The wedding my father was threatening me about was, of course, Jessica's. She was marrying Trevor, a wealthy commercial real estate guy I'd met twice. Both times, he looked right through me. They were perfect for each other, really, both so self-absorbed they could barely see past their own reflections. Dad, I have exams that week. I lied, even though I'd graduated 3 weeks earlier, summa cum laude, valedictorian of my class, with a 6-figure job offer waiting for me. None of them knew. I'd stopped sharing my accomplishments years ago when I realized they just didn't care. Exams can wait, he snapped. Your sister's wedding happens once. You think your mother and I struggled to put you through school so you could skip family obligations. That line almost made me laugh. A bitter, silent laugh. Struggled? They'd paid my first semester 4 years ago and held it over my head like they'd bought me a palace. After that, I took out loans, worked 3 part-time jobs, applied for every scholarship. I paid my own way while they poured money into Jessica's sorority fees, designer clothes, and spring break trips. I'll think about it, I said, my voice carefully neutral. You'll do more than think about it. You'll be there, in a dress, with a smile on your face, or you can forget about me writing another tuition check. Your choice. He hung up. I looked around my apartment. It wasn't much, a studio that sometimes smelled like the neighbors' cooking, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every book, paid for with my own money. My family had no idea I'd been financially independent for years. His threat about tuition. Laughable. There was no tuition left to pay. I was starting at Thornberry Systems, a top environmental engineering firm, in 2 weeks. I had zero intention of attending Jessica's wedding. But they didn't know that. And Jessica? She probably didn't even know I existed half the time. I scrolled through the family chat, endless messages about flowers, seating charts, and my mother's 400 gushing photos of Jessica in various white gowns. Not once did anyone ask how I was. Not once did they acknowledge my final year of college. When I'd mentioned my graduation date a month ago, my mother had just said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to Jessica's bachelorette party. I'd stopped expecting anything different. Jessica was the star, I was the stagehand. That was our family dynamic, and I knew it wouldn't change. But what they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to find out, was that I'd outgrown needing their approval. I'd built a life they knew nothing about, achieved things they'd never celebrated, and created a future that had nothing to do with them. On my desk sat a thick envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $12,350, the exact amount my parents had paid for my first semester. It had taken months to save, living on ramen and discounted groceries, but I'd done it. I wasn't giving it to them out of obligation. I was giving it to them to cut the last thread that tied me to their control. No threats, no guilt trips, nothing. The wedding was in 2 days. I wasn't going, but I hadn't told them yet. I wanted to see the look on my father's face when I handed him that envelope. I wanted him to realize his threats meant nothing, that I didn't need him or his money, that I'd succeeded in spite of them, not because of them. Maybe it was petty, but after years of being treated like I didn't matter, I wanted them to know exactly what they'd lost. Growing up felt like living in a spotlight always pointed at someone else. Jessica, 3 years younger, absorbed all their attention. She was pretty, charming, could wrap them around her finger. I was practical, quiet, focused on school because that was the only place I felt like I mattered. They never said I wasn't good enough, but their actions screamed it. Honor roll. That's wonderful, sweetie. Before my mother turned back to Jessica's dance recital. Regional science fair? My father's pat on the shoulder, then an hour talking about Jessica's cheerleading squad. My achievements were footnotes. By college, I'd stopped competing. I focused on my studies, worked my jobs, built a separate life. I came home for holidays, but stopped sharing details. What was the point? They weren't listening anyway. Jessica, meanwhile, coasted through a business degree at a state school, entirely funded by our parents. Parties, sororities, endless glamorous social media posts. She graduated with mediocre grades and no job prospects, but it didn't matter. She'd met Trevor, and he had money and connections. That's all my parents cared about. The engagement was announced 6 months prior at a dinner I'd reluctantly attended. Jessica flashed a massive diamond, squealed about wine country. My mother cried tears of joy. My father shook Trevor's hand. I sat there, smiling politely, part of the audience applauding someone else's life. Nobody asked about my future. After that dinner, driving back to Portland, I made a decision. I was done. They could have their perfect daughter, their perfect son-in-law, their perfect life. I didn't need to be included, but cutting ties wasn't simple. There were my father's threats, his constant reminders of tuition. That's why I saved the money. I wanted to close that chapter cleanly. The night before the wedding, my mother called. Laura, honey, I just wanted to make sure you're coming tomorrow. Your father's been worried. Worried? As if they cared about me being there for any reason other than appearances. I'll be there, I said. Oh, good. Jessica will be so happy. She's been asking about you. Another lie. What time does the ceremony start? 3 o'clock. But family needs to be there by 1 o'clock for photos. You'll be there by 1 o'clock, right? And you'll wear something nice. Jessica wants everyone to look their best. Of course she did. My simple navy dress wouldn't meet her standards. I'll look fine, Mom. Okay, honey. We'll see you tomorrow. And Laura, try to be happy for your sister. This is her special day. I hung up without responding. Try to be happy for her. As if I'd spent my entire life doing anything else. That night, I barely slept. I rehearsed my speech a dozen times. Part of me wondered if I should. Just mail the check, avoid the drama. It would be easier. But another part, the part that had been ignored and dismissed for years, wanted them to see me. To understand I didn't need them. I arrived at the Beaverton venue at 1:15, 15 minutes late. I'd sat in my car, trying to work up the nerve. The venue was beautiful, of course. White roses, twinkling lights, a string quartet. Guests milled around in expensive clothes. I spotted my parents near the front, laughing with Trevor's family. They looked happy, proud, completely absorbed. I took a deep breath, gripped the envelope, and walked toward them. My father saw me first. His expression instantly shifted from relaxed to annoyed. You're late, he said, loud enough for a few people to turn. Traffic, I lied. My mother frowned at my dress. Oh, Laura, that's what you're wearing. It's fine, I said. Well, I suppose it'll have to do. Come on, we need to take family photos. She gestured toward a floral arch. I didn't move. Instead, I held out the envelope to my father. What's this? He asked, taking it but not opening it. Open it, I said. He gave me a suspicious look, then tore it open. His eyes widened as he pulled out the check. What is this? He repeated, but his tone had changed. He wasn't annoyed anymore. He was confused. It's a check for $12,350, I said. That's the exact amount you paid for my first semester of college. I'm paying you back. My mother leaned in, her mouth falling open. Laura, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've been holding that tuition payment over my head for 4 years. You threatened to stop paying for my education every time I didn't do what you wanted. Well, I'm done. That's your money back. Now you don't have any leverage. My father stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Leverage? Laura, we were trying to help you. Help me? I let out a short, bitter laugh. You paid for 1 semester, then acted like you'd funded my entire degree. I paid for the rest myself. Loans, scholarships, 3 jobs. I did it all on my own while you threw money at Jessica like it was confetti. That's not fair. my mother said, her voice rising. We've always supported you. No, you haven't. You supported Jessica. I was just an afterthought. People were staring now. My father's face flushed red. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. This is not the time or place for this conversation. Your sister is about to get married. I know, I said. And I'm not staying. What? I'm not staying for the wedding. I came here to give you that check and to tell you that I'm done. Done pretending I'm part of this family. Done being invisible. Done letting you treat me like I don't matter. My mother reached out, but I stepped back. Laura, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave. Watch me. I turned and walked toward the exit. My father called after me, his voice sharp and commanding. Laura, get back here right now. I didn't stop. My heart pounded. My hands shook, but my steps were steady. Behind me, I heard my mother's high-pitched, frantic voice, something about how embarrassing this was, how I was ruining everything. But I wasn't ruining anything. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. I made it to my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Part of me expected my father to storm after me, demand I come back, threaten me again. But he didn't. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the venue and my family behind. As I drove back to Portland, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and absolute freedom. I'd spent so long trying to earn their approval, to prove I was worth their attention. And for what? They were never going to see me the way I wanted them to. But here's the thing, I didn't need them to. I'd built a life without their help. I'd earned my degree, landed my job, and proven to myself that I was capable and strong. Their opinion of me didn't change any of that. Still, a small thought nagged at me. They didn't know about my graduation, my job, my accomplishments. Part of me wanted them to find out, to see exactly what they dismissed. But another part wondered if it even mattered. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the acceptance letter for the graduate program. I hadn't decided whether to accept it yet. The job at Thornberry Systems was incredible, but the program would open even more doors. For the first time, I had choices, real choices, and nobody was going to take that away from me. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Where did you go? Mom said you left. What's going on? I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever happened next, I was done explaining myself to people who didn't care. The week after the wedding, my phone exploded. My mother called 17 times in 3 days. My father sent increasingly angry texts. Jessica left voicemails that quickly turned accusatory. I ignored them all. I focused on preparing for my new job. Most of the time, I believed I'd done the right thing. But late at night, doubts crept in. Had I overreacted? Was I being petty? Then I'd remember my father's look of irritation, my mother's concern about my dress, the years of being overlooked. No, I hadn't overreacted. I'd finally stood up for myself. 5 days after the wedding, someone knocked on my door. It was Jessica. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. What are you doing here? I asked, door partially closed. She looked around my small apartment, her nose wrinkling slightly. I knew what she was thinking. I want to know why you ruined my wedding, she said, tears in her eyes. I didn't ruin your wedding. I left before it even started. Exactly. You left, and it caused this huge scene. Mom spent the entire ceremony crying. Dad was furious. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I'm sorry my absence was inconvenient for you. That's not what I meant. She wiped her eyes. I just don't understand. Why would you do that? Why would you give Dad that money and just walk out? Because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter. What are you talking about? You matter. You're my sister. I laughed humorlessly. Really? When's the last time you asked me how I was doing? When's the last time Mom or Dad came to one of my events or celebrated one of my accomplishments? Jessica looked genuinely confused. What accomplishments? And there it was. The proof I'd been invisible. I graduated 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. Summa cum laude. Valedictorian. I gave a speech at the ceremony. None of you came because none of you knew about it. I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't care. Her mouth fell open. You graduated? Why didn't you say anything? Because every time I try to talk about my life, you or mom or dad change the subject to talk about you. Your sorority, your boyfriend, your wedding, your plans. There was never room for me in the conversation. Jessica sank onto my couch, genuinely shaken. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You never asked. Laura, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't realize that I was the only one mom and dad cared about. That I spent my entire childhood trying to get them to notice me. That I worked 3 jobs to pay for college while they handed you everything. She flinched. That's not fair. I didn't ask them to do that. No, but you never questioned it either. You never once thought about how it might feel to be me. Always standing in your shadow. Always being compared to you and coming up short. I never compared us. That was mom and dad. And you benefited from it. I sat across from her. Look, I'm not angry at you, Jessica. Not really. You didn't create this dynamic, but you didn't do anything to change it either. And neither did I until now. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? I don't know. I start my new job on Monday. I'm moving on with my life without us, without expectations, without needing your approval or mom and dad's validation. If you want to be part of my life, you're going to have to actually be interested in my life, not just show up when it's convenient. Jessica nodded slowly. I can try. I want to try. Then start by listening. I got a job at Thornberry Systems. I'm going to be working on environmental engineering projects, designing sustainable water systems. I'm making 6 figures. I'm also considering a graduate program that would let me specialize in environmental policy. Her eyes widened. Laura, that's amazing. I had no idea. Nobody did. Because nobody asked. She stood, looking uncertain. I should go. Trevor's waiting in the car. But Laura, I really am sorry and I'm proud of you. For what it's worth. I walked her to the door. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned back. Are you going to talk to mom and dad? I don't know. Maybe eventually, but not now. I need space. She nodded and left. I closed the door, feeling utterly exhausted. The conversation had been emotionally draining, but it had also felt necessary. Maybe Jessica would actually make an effort. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I'd said what I needed to say. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Your mother is devastated. You owe her an apology. Even now, after everything, he was making it about them. Not once had he acknowledged how they'd hurt me. I typed out a response and deleted it 3 times before finally settling on something simple. I don't owe anyone anything. I paid you back. We're even. His reply came immediately. That money doesn't erase 18 years of raising you. You're being selfish and ungrateful. Selfish. The word stung, because part of me worried he was right. But the larger part of me knew he was wrong. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't ungrateful. And refusing to accept mistreatment isn't a character flaw. I turned off my phone and went to bed. My first week at Thornberry Systems was overwhelming in the best way possible. My team was brilliant, passionate. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. I felt like myself again. Not someone's daughter or sister, just Laura, an engineer doing work that mattered. On Friday, my supervisor, Gretchen, called me into her office. You're doing excellent work. I've been impressed. She then offered me a spot on a major project with the city of Portland, a comprehensive sustainability initiative. It's a lot of responsibility, especially for someone just starting out, but I think you can handle it. I felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly what I'd worked so hard for, earned on my own merit, not because of family connections. That evening, I met Kelsey, my best friend from college. She was one of the few who knew the full story. I still can't believe you actually handed him a check and walked out, she said, shaking her head in admiration. That's the most badass thing I've ever heard. It didn't feel badass at the time. It felt terrifying. But you did it anyway. That's what matters. She took a sip of her wine. Have you heard from them since Jessica came by? Dad keeps texting. Mom leaves voicemails. I've been ignoring most of it. Good. You don't owe them anything, Laura. You've been taking care of yourself for years. They just didn't notice. That's the thing that bothers me the most. They didn't notice. I worked so hard to be independent, to not need their help, and they just assumed I was struggling or failing or whatever. They never once considered that I might actually be succeeding. Kelsey squeezed my hand. Their loss. Seriously, you're brilliant and successful, and you don't need their validation. You know that, right? I'm starting to. When I got home, I found an envelope slipped under my door with my mother's handwriting. Inside, a card with a generic message about family and forgiveness, and below it, my mother had written, "Laura, please come home. We miss you and we love you. Whatever issues we have, we can work through them together. You're our daughter and we want you in our lives. Please call me. Love, Mom." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part knew better. This wasn't an apology. It was a plea for me to come back and pretend everything was fine. I set the card aside. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed memories. The time they forgot to pick me up from school because they were at Jessica's dance recital. The Christmas I got socks while Jessica got a laptop. The countless dinners where I sat silently. Then I thought about the future I was building. The job, the independence, the respect I was earning from colleagues. I didn't need my family to validate me anymore. I'd learned to validate myself. The following week, I dove deeper into the Portland Sustainability Project. It was massive exciting. One afternoon, my phone rang. An unknown local number. I normally wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello! Is this Laura?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is Trevor, Jessica's husband. We met briefly at... Well, we've met a couple times." His voice was hesitant, almost nervous. Strange. "What do you want?" "I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes?" "I'm listening," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Look, I know things are complicated with your family right now. Jessica told me what happened at the wedding, and I wanted to reach out because I think there's something you should know." "What is it?" He paused. "Can we meet in person? I'd rather not have this conversation over the phone." I hesitated. Meeting Trevor alone felt weird, and I didn't trust his motives, but curiosity won. "Fine. There's a coffee shop on Northwest 23rd called Brew Point. I can meet you there in an hour." When I arrived, Trevor was already there, 2 coffees on the table. He stood, looking uncomfortable. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "I got you a coffee. Wasn't sure what you liked." "Thanks." I sat down. Trevor ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, so I'm just going to say this straight out. Your parents have been lying to Jessica and me about their financial situation." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "About 3 months ago, your dad came to me asking for a loan. Said they were having temporary cash flow issues with his business, needed $20,000 to cover expenses until a big client paid them. He promised to pay me back within 60 days. My father ran a small consulting firm, decent, but not lucrative. $20,000 was a lot. Did you give it to him?" "I did. He's family, and I wanted to help. But the 60 days came and went. He kept making excuses. Eventually, he said he'd pay me back after Jessica's wedding. Let me guess, he hasn't paid you back." "No. And when I pressed him last week, he told me he actually needs another $15,000 to keep the business afloat. He said if I didn't help, they might lose everything." I sat back. "So, what does this have to do with me?" "Jessica mentioned that your parents paid for your college education. She said they've been financially supporting both of you for years. But if that's true, why would they need to borrow money from me? Why would they be struggling?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "They didn't pay for my education, Trevor. They paid for my first semester 4 years ago. 1 semester. I paid for everything else myself. Loans, scholarships, working multiple jobs. And I seriously doubt they've been financially supporting Jessica the way you think they have." His face went pale. "What?" "My parents like to take credit for things they didn't do. They've been telling people for years that they put me through college, but it's not true. And I'm willing to bet they've been exaggerating their financial contributions to Jessica's life too." Trevor looked genuinely shocked. "But they talk about it all the time. About how much they've invested in both of you, how much they've sacrificed. It's a performance. They want people to think they're generous, supportive parents, but the reality is very different." I paused. "Did my dad say why his business is struggling?" "He said it's been a tough market, clients tightening budgets, the usual stuff. But now I'm wondering if any of it is true." "It might be. Or he might just be bad at managing money and too proud to admit it. Either way, it's not your problem. I know, but Jessica is worried about them. She thinks they're on the verge of losing their house. She's been talking about us helping them financially long-term, maybe even moving them in with us. I could see the panic in his eyes. Trevor came from money, but he wasn't stupid. He knew supporting his in-laws indefinitely could drain his resources and strain his marriage. What do you want me to do about it? I asked. I don't know. I just thought you should know. And I guess I wanted to ask you directly, did they really pay for your college? No. They paid $12,000 4 years ago. I paid them back last week. We're even. He absorbed this, jaw tight. Jessica doesn't know any of this. Then maybe you should tell her. I'm not sure she'll believe me. She idolizes your parents. She thinks they're saints who sacrificed everything for their kids. That's because she's the only one who actually benefited from their sacrifices, real or imagined. I took a sip of my coffee. Look, Trevor, I can't help you with this. I cut ties with my family for a reason. If you want to know the truth about their finances, you're going to have to investigate that yourself. Ask for documentation, bank statements, business records. Don't just take their word for it. You're right. I know you're right. It's just this isn't what I signed up for. Welcome to my world. We sat in silence. Then Trevor said, For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Walking away from the wedding, setting boundaries. Jessica told me what you said about being invisible, and I think she's finally starting to understand how messed up the dynamic was. Maybe. Or maybe she's just upset because things are getting uncomfortable. He smiled grimly. Probably a little of both. After Trevor left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour. My parents were in financial trouble, possibly serious trouble. And instead of being honest, they were manipulating people, creating more debt. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd always acted like they were so much more successful and stable than I was, like they had everything figured out. Turns out, they were just better at hiding their problems. But another part of me felt sad. My parents had spent so much energy maintaining appearances that they'd lost sight of what actually mattered, and now they were paying the price. I pulled out my phone and looked at my father's last text. You're being selfish and ungrateful. I typed a response. I know about the money you borrowed from Trevor. I know about the business struggling. If you're in trouble, be honest about it instead of blaming me for setting boundaries. I'm not coming back to save you. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His response came an hour later. How dare you interfere in my business? This has nothing to do with you. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That evening, Jessica called. Trevor told me about the money, she said without preamble. Is it true about college? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? What? Would it have mattered? She was quiet. I don't know. Maybe. I just feel like I don't know anything anymore. I thought Mom and Dad were these perfect parents. And now I'm finding out they've been lying about all kinds of things. They're not perfect, Jessica. Nobody is. But they've been using their supposed generosity as leverage for years, and I'm done playing along. I'm starting to see that. She sighed. Trevor wants to ask them for financial records before we give them any more money. I think he's right, but I don't know how to bring it up without them getting angry. That's between you and Trevor. I can't help you with that. I know. I wanted you to know that I believe you about everything, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. It was the closest thing to a real apology I'd gotten from anyone in my family. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. Thanks, Jessica. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, emotionally exhausted. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of confrontations, revelations, and decisions. I'd cut ties with my parents, started a new job, and watched my family's carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. And through it all, I'd stayed true to myself. I'd set boundaries. I demanded respect. I'd refused to let them make me feel small anymore. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable. But it was necessary. 3 weeks after my conversation with Trevor, I was deep into preparations for the Portland Sustainability Project presentation. Our team had put together a comprehensive proposal, technical specs, cost analyses, environmental impact. It was some of the best work I'd ever been part of. The presentation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at City Hall. High stakes. The night before the presentation, my phone rang. It was my mother. I debated answering. We hadn't spoken since the wedding. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello. Laura, honey, it's Mom. Her voice was strained. I need to talk to you about something important. What is it? It's your father. He's had a heart attack. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, he was still my father. The thought scared me. Is he going to be okay? They think so. But Laura, we need to talk about his business. With him in the hospital, someone needs to step in and help manage things. And with everything that's been happening, I thought maybe you could? No. Laura, please. I know things have been difficult, but your father needs help. The business is struggling, and if someone doesn't step in, we could lose everything. Then hire someone or ask Jessica. Jessica doesn't know anything about business management, and we can't afford to hire someone. You're the only one who has the skills and knowledge to help us through this. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull of guilt. This was exactly what they'd always done. Waited for a crisis, then expected me to fix it. Mom, I'm sorry Dad is sick, I really am, but I can't drop everything to save his business. I have my own career, my own responsibilities. Your career can wait. This is family. Family works both ways. You can't ignore me for years and then expect me to come running when you need something. We never ignored you, Laura. We've always loved you and supported you. That's not true, and you know it. You paid for 1 semester of college and held it over my head for 4 years. You dismissed my achievements, overlooked my struggles, and made it clear that Jessica was the only one who mattered. And now that you need something from me, suddenly I'm important? That's not fair. We did the best we could. Maybe, but your best wasn't good enough. And I'm not going to sacrifice my life to fix your problems. She was silent. When she spoke again, her voice had turned cold. So that's it. You're just going to abandon us when we need you most. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting boundaries. If you need help with Dad's business, hire a consultant. If you need emotional support, call Jessica. But don't ask me to give up everything I've worked for to bail you out. Fine. I can see we can't count on you. She hung up. I sat there shaken. Part of me wondered if I'd made the wrong choice, if I was being too harsh. But another part knew I'd done the right thing. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who only valued me when they needed something. The next morning, I put on my best charcoal gray suit. I looked confident, capable. At City Hall, my team delivered our presentation. When it was my turn, my heart pounded, but my voice was steady. Good afternoon. I'm Laura, and I'll be discussing the environmental impact assessment and long-term sustainability metrics for this project. I walked them through the data, explaining the methodology. I saw some council members nodding, leaning forward with interest. When I finished, I handed the presentation back to Gretchen. Thank you, the council president said. Now we'll open the floor for questions. One council member, George, focused specifically on my section. Laura, your projections are impressive, but they seem optimistic. What happens if we don't see these conservation numbers? I'd anticipated this. We've built in conservative estimates at every stage. Even in a worst-case scenario, we'd still see a minimum 20% reduction. And our plan includes quarterly assessments so we can adjust strategies in real time. He seemed satisfied. We gathered our materials. Gretchen had a huge smile. That was excellent. You all did fantastic, especially you, Laura. You handled those environmental questions like a pro. I'd earned my place in that room. Nobody had given it to me. Nobody had pulled strings. It was mine. After all 4 presentations were complete, the council president announced, the contract will be awarded to Thornberry Systems. Their proposal demonstrated the most comprehensive approach, strongest technical expertise. Congratulations to the Thorn team. The room erupted. Gretchen grabbed my hand, her eyes shining. We'd won. That evening, I found another envelope under my door. This time, from my father. His handwriting shaky. A short letter. Laura, your mother told me about your conversation last night. I'm disappointed in your decision, but I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You've made it clear that your career is more important than family. I hope you can live with that choice. When I'm gone, remember that I asked for your help and you refused. Dad, even from a hospital bed, after a heart attack, He was trying to manipulate me with guilt. It wasn't an attempt to mend our relationship, it was a weapon. I walked to my kitchen, turned on the stove, and held the letter over the flame until it caught fire. I dropped it into the sink and watched it burn, his words turning to ash. I wasn't going to carry his guilt anymore. The next week crawled by. On Tuesday evening, Jessica called. "Hey," she said. "I heard about Dad. Mom said you refused to help with the business. That's not exactly what happened, but sure. I'm not calling to lecture you. Actually, I wanted to tell you that Trevor and I talked to Mom and Dad about their finances. We asked to see bank statements and business records, and it's worse than we thought. Dad's business has been losing money for over a year. They've been living on credit cards and loans, using new debt to pay off old debt. They're in serious trouble. What are you going to do?" Trevor's arranging for them to meet with a financial advisor, maybe file for bankruptcy. We're also setting up a meeting with a business broker. That sounds like the right move. Yeah. And Laura? Trevor asked them directly about your college tuition. Dad admitted he only paid for one semester. Mom tried to defend it, said they planned to pay for more but couldn't afford it. But the point is, they lied to us. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. It's okay. You believe what they told you. That's not your fault. It kind of is, though. I should have paid more attention. I should have asked you about your life, instead of just assuming everything was fine. She paused. I know things are still complicated between us, but I want to try to have a real relationship with you. Not the fake sister stuff where we only see each other at holidays. Actually knowing each other. I'd like that, too. Good. Can we get coffee sometime? Just the two of us. Yeah, I'd like that. It was the closest thing to a real apology I'd gotten. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. A month later, I received a promotion at work. Junior project manager, significant raise, more responsibility on the Portland project. Gretchen told me, "You've proven yourself, Laura. You're smart, dedicated, and you handle pressure well. I think you're ready for this next step." I accepted immediately, overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. I also decided to apply for the graduate program, part-time, with Thornberry's tuition reimbursement. I'd worked too hard to stop now. I also finally responded to my father's email. "Dad, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm open to having coffee and talking, but I need you to understand that things can't go back to how they were. If we're going to have a relationship moving forward, it needs to be honest and equal." He agreed to meet. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. When my father walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, his face drawn. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You're welcome. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the heart attack. About my life, my choices, my priorities. And I realize I've made a lot of mistakes, especially with you. Your mother and I put too much pressure on Jessica to be perfect, and not enough attention on you. We took you for granted, assumed you'd be fine because you were independent and self-sufficient. But that wasn't fair to you. You deserve better. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest, and it was a start. I appreciate you saying that. I also want you to know that I read the articles about your project. I had no idea you were doing such important work. I'm impressed, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to support you along the way. I didn't tell you about it because I didn't think you'd care. I know, and that's on me." He took a sip of his coffee. "I don't expect you to forgive me or to suddenly want a close relationship, but I hope we can start fresh, maybe slowly build something better." We talked for another hour. It wasn't easy, but it felt real. When we parted ways, I didn't feel the weight of expectation I'd always carried. I felt lighter, freer, like I'd finally let go of needing their approval. In the months that followed, my parents faced the full consequences of their choices. The business sold for far less than my father had hoped. They had to file for bankruptcy, losing their house and most possessions. They moved into a modest apartment, started over. The lifestyle they'd worked so hard to project crumbled completely. Friends quietly distanced themselves. Jessica helped where she could, but she and Trevor had their own lives to build. As for me, I continued moving forward. I started the graduate program, excelled in my new role, and slowly built a relationship with Jessica based on honesty. My father and I met for coffee occasionally, carefully reconstructing something that resembled a relationship. My mother took longer to come around, but eventually, She stopped trying to manipulate me and started actually listening. Looking back on that day at Jessica's wedding, the day I handed my father that envelope and walked away, I realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my worth, refusing to be controlled, and choosing myself for the first time in my life. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been mine, and that made all the difference. Call to action. If you've ever felt like your worth wasn't truly seen, or faced a moment where you had to choose yourself over ingrained family dynamics, tell me your story in the comments below. What would you have done in my place? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts.